So, hello everybody, welcome back to another video with me where we start a read along session. Today, we're going to continue from the part 2 of this chapter, the India in the first half of the 17th century. We've completed till this paragraph, so I'll just start from over here. The question of Kandahar and relations with Iran. The dread of Uzbek power was the most potent factor which brought the Safavids and the Mughals together. Despite the Uzbek attempt to raise anti-Shia sentiments against Iran and Mughal dislike of the tolerant policies adopted by the Safavid rulers, I guess there's some kind of a punctuation mistake over here. So I'll just try to read it again. The dread of Uzbek power was the most potent factor which brought the Safavids and the Mughals together. Cool. Despite the Uzbek attempt to raise anti-Shia sentiments against Iran and the Mughal dislike of the intolerant policies adopted by the Safavid rulers. Okay, so the Uzbek power was paramount, I guess, which actually tried to coalesce the Safavids and the Mughals, but uh, in spite of the Uzbeks' attempts in trying to raise the anti-Shia sentiments against Iran and also Mughal dislike of intolerant policies adopted towards the Safavid rulers. The only trouble spot between the two was Kandahar, the possession of which was claimed by both on strategic and economic grounds both on strategic as well as for considerations of sentiments and prestige. Kandahar has been a part of the Timurid Empire and has been ruled over by Babur's cousins, the rulers of Herat, till they were ousted by the Uzbeks in 1507. Babur held Kandahar briefly in 1507, but when the Safavids defeated the Uzbek chief Shabani Khan and captured Herat and the rest of the Khorasan, they laid claim to Kandahar also. So Shabani Khan has been mentioned a lot of times and he played a pivotal role in the power dynamics between the Uzbeks, Safavids, Mughals, the Timurid princes. For the next decade and a half, however, Kandahar remained in the hands of semi-independent governors who tendered their allegiance to the Mughals or to the Safavids as it suited their convenience. Strategically, Kandahar was vital for the defense of Kabul. The fort of Kandahar was considered to be one of the strongest forts in the region and was well provided with water. Situated at the junction of roads leading to Kabul and Herat, situated at the junction of roads leading to Kabul and Herat, Kandahar dominated the whole southern Afghanistan and occupied a position of immense strategic importance. A modern writer has observed the Kabul-Ghazni-Kandahar line represented a strategic and local frontier. Beyond Kabul and Khyber, there was no natural line of defense. Moreover, the position of Kandahar made it easier to control the Afghan and Baloch tribes. Kandahar was strategically very important to the regions surrounding over there and to the power dynamic of the various kingdoms and various dynasties. It was described as the Kabul Ghazni Kandahar line, which was a strategic and local frontier, and beyond Khyber, there was no line of defense. So, the position of Kandahar made it easier to control the Afghan and Baloch tribes. After the conquest of Sindh and Balochistan by Akbar, the strategic and economic importance of Kandahar for Mughals increased. Kandahar was rich and fertile province and was the hub of the movement of men and goods between India and Central Asia. It kind of uh, it's kind of being portrayed as the gateway between India and Central Asia. The trade from Central Asia to Multan via Kandahar and thence to and thence towards the river and thence down the river Indus to the sea steadily gained in importance because the roads across Iran were frequently disturbed due to wars and internal commotions. Central Asia to Multan via Kandahar. Akbar wanted to promote trade on this route and pointed out to Abdullah Uzbek that it was an alternative route to pilgrims and the goods traffic to Mecca. Taking all these factors into account, it would appear that Kandahar was not as important to Persians as to the Mughals. For Iran, Kandahar was more of an outpost, an important one, no doubt, rather than a vital bastion in a defense system. In the earlier phase, however, the dispute over Kandahar was not allowed to affect good relations between the two countries. Kandahar came under Babur's control in 1522 when the Uzbeks were threatening Khorasan once again. No serious objection to the Mughal conquest of Kandahar was raised by the Persians in view of the situation. However, when Humayun sought shelter at the court of Shah Tahmasp, Iranian monarch, agreed to help him provided he transferred Kandahar to Iran after its conquest from his half-brother Kamran. Humayun had little choice but to agree, but after its conquest, Humayun found excuses to keep it under his control. In fact, Kandahar was his base operations against Kamran in Kabul. Shah Tahmasp captured Kandahar, taking advantage of the confusion following Humayun's death. Akbar made no effort to regain it till the Uzbeks under Abdullah Uzbek posed renewed threat to Iran and to the Mughals. The Mughal conquest of Kandahar was not a part of an agreement between Akbar and Uzbeks to partition Persian Empire as some modern historians have argued. It was more to establish a viable defense line in the northwest against a possible Uzbek invasion, since Khorasan has passed under the Uzbek control by that time and Kandahar was cut off from Persia. So there was just a battle going on between different dynasties for Kandahar, which was termed as a very strategic location. Considering there was no line of defense for the Northwestern Empire, the Kandahar provided a very strategic and defensible barrier. And the occupation of Kandahar would mean that more control towards the Afghan and Baluch tribes. Also, Kandahar was an important route for goods and trade uh, from Central Asia to India because there were certain fights or certain battles going on between the Iran war, between the Iran regions, because of which there was continuous hassle and uh, like troubles towards which would contribute to the troubles in traveling and the trade. So Akbar also suggested Kandahar as an alternative route for pilgrims and to the goods to Mecca. However, these Uzbeks were constantly in battle or constantly in struggle with this very region, for they also knew the strategic importance of it. Relations between Iran and Mughals continued to be cordial. Despite the Mughal conquest of Kandahar, after Akbar's death, the Persians made an abortive attempt on Kandahar, but Shah Abbas was who was perhaps the greatest of the Safavid rulers, was keen to maintain good relations with Jahangir. He repudiated the attack on Kandahar, and there was a regular exchange of embassies and costly gifts, including rarities between the two. Shah Abbas also established close diplomatic and commercial relations with Deccan states, but this was not objected to by Jahangir. Neither side felt threatened, and there was an imaginary portrait by a court artist showing Jahangir and Abbas embracing each other with a globe of the world beneath their feet. Culturally, too, the two countries came even closer to each other during the period. Nur Jahan, whose father had come from Persia, played a role in this, but the alliance proved to be more useful to Shah Abbas than to Shah Jahan, for it the latter to neglect cultivating friendship with the Uzbek chiefs, and he felt secure in the friendship of his brother Shah Abbas. For it led the latter to neglect cultivating friendship with the Uzbek chiefs, and as he felt secure in the friendship of his brother Shah Abbas. In 1620, Shah Abbas sent a polite request for the restoration of Kandahar and made preparations for attacking it. Jahangir was taken by surprise, for he was diplomatically isolated and militarily unprepared for it. Hasty preparations for the relief of Kandahar was undertaken, but Prince Shah Jahan put forward impossible demands before he would march. As we've read earlier, Shah Jahan was apprehensive of his father's intentions and the other ruling class because he wanted to establish himself into the throne. But he said that if he remains away from the seat or the throne for a long period of time due to the Kandahar struggle, he would be ousted from contesting the uh, crown, the throne, and hence he would not be able to become the next emperor. So he was not willing to go, and he put many unlegit demands. As a result, Kandahar passed into the hands of Persians. Although Shah Abbas tried to erase the bitterness over the loss of Kandahar by sending a lavish embassy to Jahangir and offered facile explanations which were accepted by Jahangir formally, the cordiality which had marked the Mughal relations with Iran came to an end, and an end of diplomatic preparations aimed at Iran now began. And an era of diplomatic preparations aimed at Iran now began. Far-reaching changes had taken place in Central Asian politics after the death of Abdullah Khan Uzbek in 1598. The Uzbek Empire had disintegrated due to the internecine tribal feuds, and Persia had taken advantage of the situation to recover Khorasan, but it suffered a defeat near Balkh when it tried to advance further. The Uzbek power was still considerable and not to be trifled with. After some time, Imam Quli emerged as an independent ruler of Bukhara and Balkh. Although the Uzbeks were no longer in a position, no challenge Shahbaz for the control of Khorasan, they were not averse to making marauding raids into Afghanistan and on Kabul. The Persian capture of Kandahar made the Uzbeks uneasy. Shortly after the capture of Kandahar, Shah Abbas turned towards the west and recaptured Baghdad and the Turks. Hence, the earlier idea of an alliance of the three Sunni powers, the Uzbeks, Mughals, and the Ottomans, against Iran was revived, and a series of embassies were exchanged between Jahangir and the Uzbeks for finalizing an accord. So, the Persian capture of Kandahar made the Uzbeks totally uneasy, and shortly after the capture of Kandahar, Shah Abbas, who was the Persian emperor, or the perhaps the greatest of the Safavid rulers, turned towards the west and recaptured Baghdad and from the Turks. Hence, the earlier idea of allegiance of the three Sunni powers, which are Uzbeks, Mughals, and the Ottomans, against the Irans was revived, and a series of embassies were exchanged between Jahangir and the Uzbeks for finalizing an accord. These efforts continued until under Shah Jahan after the death of Shah Jahangir. In 1627, the Uzbek leader Imam Quli grandiloquently thanked Jahangir for the help given by Akbar to Abdullah Khan Uzbek in Khorasan. But for fear of Shah Abbas, he had also kept the Persian ruler informed of the Mughal intrigues against Persia. There were also a series of Uzbek attacks on Kabul both before and after the accession of Shah Jahan. It was thus apparent that the Uzbeks could not be counted upon for any help against Persia. The Ottomans were too far away to be effective. Moreover, they took a superior attitude which was not acceptable to the Mughals. Hence, Shah Jahan took recourse to diplomacy. After the death of Shah Abbas, there were disturbances in Iran. Taking advantage of this and after being free of Deccan affairs, Shah Jahan induced Ali Murdan Khan, the Persian governor of Kandahar, to defect to the side of the Mughals. Shah Jahan's Balkh campaign. Due to the conquest of Kandahar, but the conquest of Kandahar was the only means to an end, was only the means to an end. Shah Jahan was more concerned with the serious danger of recurrent Uzbek attacks on Kabul and their intrigues with the Baluch and the Afghan tribes. At the time, both Bokhara and Balkh had come under the control of Nasr Muhammad, younger brother of Imam Quli. Nasr Muhammad and his son Abdul Aziz were ambitious and had intrigued with Afghan tribesmen for gaining control of Kabul and Ghazni. However, soon Abdul Aziz headed a rebellion against his father, and only Balkh remained under the control of Nasr Muhammad, who appealed to Shah Jahan for help. Secured from the side of the Persians, Shah Jahan accepted the appeal with alacrity. He moved from Lahore to Kabul and deputed a large army under Prince Murad to help Nasr Muhammad. The army, which consisted of 50,000 horses and 10,000 footmen, including musketeers, rocketeers, and gunners, and a contingent of Rajputs, left Kabul in the middle of 1646. Shah Jahan had carefully instructed Prince Murad to treat Nasr Muhammad with great consideration and to restore Balkh to him if he behaved with modesty and submission. Further, if Nasr Muhammad expressed a desire to regain Samarkand and Bukhara, the prince was to do everything to help him. Obviously, Shah Jahan wanted a friendly ruler at Bukhara who looked to the Mughals for help and support, but Murad's impetuosity ruined the plan. He marched on Balkh without waiting for instructions from Nasr Muhammad, ordered his men to enter the fort of Balkh, in which Nasr Muhammad was residing, and curtly asked him to wait on him personally. Uncertain of the prince's intentions, Nasr Muhammad fled. The Mughals were forced to occupy Balkh and hold it in the face of a sullen and hostile population. Nor was an alternative to Nasr Muhammad easily available. Abdul Aziz, son of Nasr Muhammad, raised the Uzbek tribes against the Mughals in Transoxania and mustered an army of 120,000 men across the river Oxus. Meanwhile, Prince Murad, who had been pinning for home, was replaced by Prince Aurangzeb. The Mughals made no effort to defend the Oxus since it was easily fordable. Instead, they placed pickets at strategic places and kept the main force together so that it could march easily to any threatened point. The Mughals were well positioned. Abdul Aziz crossed the Oxus, but soon found himself face to face with a large Mughal army. In a running battle, the Mughals routed Uzbeks outside the gates of Balkh in 1647. The victory of the Mughals at Balkh paved the way for negotiations with the Uzbeks. The Uzbek supporters of Abdul Aziz melted away, and he now made overtures to the Mughals. Nasr Muhammad, who had taken refuge in Persia, also approached the Mughals for the restoration of this empire. After careful consideration, Shah Jahan decided in favor of Nasr Muhammad, but Nasr Muhammad was first asked to make an apology and humble submission to Prince Aurangzeb. This was a mistake since the proud Uzbek ruler was unlikely to demean himself in this way, particularly when he knew that it was impossible for the Mughals to hold on to work for any length of time. After wanting vainly for Nasr Muhammad to appear personally, the Mughals left Balkh in October 1647 since winter was fast approaching and there were no supplies in Balkh. The retreat nearly turned into a rout with hostile bands of Uzbek hovering around. Though the Mughals suffered grievous losses, the firmness of Aurangzeb prevented a disaster. The Balkh campaign of Shah Jahan had led to considerable controversy among modern historians. From the foregoing account, it should be clear that Shah Jahan was not attempting to fix the Mughal frontier on the so called scientific line, the Amu Darya, the Oxus. Yemudarya, as we have seen, was hardly a defensible line. Nor was Shah Jahan motivated by the desire to conquer Samarkand and Farghana, the Mughal homelands, though the Mughal emperors frequently talked about it. Shah Jahan's objective, it seemed, was to secure a friendly ruler in Balkh and Badakhshan, the areas which bordered Kabul and which had been ruled over by Timurid princes since till 1585. This, he believed, would also help in controlling the disaffection in the Afghan tribes living around Ghazni and in the Khyber Pass. The campaign was successful in the military sense. The Mughals conquered Balkh and defeated Uzbek attempts to oust them. This was the first significant victory of Indian arms in the region, and Shah Jahan had the reason to celebrate it. However, it was beyond the strength of the Mughals to maintain their influence at Balkh for any length of time. Politically, also, it was difficult to do so in the face of sullen Persian hostility and unfriendly local population. All in all, while the Balkh campaign raised the prestige of the Mughal arms for a time, it gained them little political advantage. Perhaps it would have been more advantageous to the Mughals and would have saved considerable expenditure of men and money if Shah Jahan had firmly adhered to the Kabul Ghazni Kandahar line so laboriously established by Akbar. Anyhow, Nasr Muhammad remained friendly to the Mughals as long as he was alive, and there was a constant exchange of envoys between the two. Mughal Persian relations, the last phase. The setback in Balkh led to a revival of Uzbek hostility in Kabul regions and Afghan tribal unrest in the Khyber Ghazni area and emboldened the Persians to attack and conquer Kandahar. So there's a quest for Kandahar going on since, I guess, more than decades, and which is taking a lot of time to come to a halt. But every time it comes to a halt, there's another rebellion going on in the neighboring areas, and then Kandahar turns hostile. This was a big blow to Shah Jahan's pride, and he launched three major campaigns one by one under Princes of Blood to try and recover Kandahar. The first attack was launched by Aurangzeb, the hero of Balkh, with an army of 50,000. Though the Mughals defeated the Persians outside the fort, they could not conquer it in face of determined Persian opposition. A second attempt led by Aurangzeb 3 years later also failed. The most grandiloquent effort was made the following year, 1653, under Dara, favorite son of Shah Jahan. Dara had made many boastful claims, but he was unable to starve the fort into surrender with help of his large army and an attempt at capturing it with the help of two of the biggest guns in the empire, which had been towed to Kandahar, was of no avail. The failure of the Mughals at Kandahar did not so much reflect the weakness of the Mughal artillery at it as has been asserted by some historians. It rather showed the inherent strength of the Kandahar fort if held by a determined commander and the ineffectiveness of medieval artillery against strong forts. This was also the Mughal experience in the Deccan. It may, however, be argued that Shah Jahan's attachment to Kandahar was more sentimental than realistic. With the growing enfeeblement of both Uzbeks and Safavids, Kandahar no longer had the same strategic importance as it earlier had. It was not so much the loss of Kandahar as the failure of the repeated Mughal efforts which affected the Mughal prestige, but even this should not be duly exaggerated, for Mughal Empire remained outwardly at the height of its power and prestige during Aurangzeb's reign. Even the proud Ottoman Sultan sent an embassy to Aurangzeb in 1680 to seek his support. Aurangzeb decided not to continue the futile conquest over Kandahar and quietly resumed diplomatic relations with Iran. However, in 1668, Shah Abbas II, the ruler of Iran, insulted the Mughal envoy, made disparaging remarks against Aurangzeb, and even threatened an invasion. This was Shah Abbas II, the ruler of Iran, another Persian ruler. The Mughals were already very apprehensive Persian from now on. So this was another dent in between their relations. The cause of this was not clear. It seems that Shah Abbas II was of an unstable character. There was a flurry of Mughal activity in Punjab and Kabul, but before any action could take place, Shah Abbas again died. His successors were non-entities, and all Persian danger to the Indian frontier disappeared till a new ruler, Nadir Shah, came to power more than 50 years later. It will thus be seen that on the whole the Mughals succeeded in maintaining a scientific frontier in northwest based on the Hindu Kush on the one side and the Kabul Ghazni line on the other. Hindu Kush on one side and Kabul Ghazni line on the other, with Kandahar as its outer bastion. So the Mughals were really successful in maintaining a longer line of defense in the northwest and maintaining their scientific frontier, uh, whereby Hindu Kush was on one side and the Kabul Ghazni line was on the other, with Kandahar as their outer bastion. Thus, their basic foreign policy was based on the defense of India. The defense of this frontier line was further buttressed by diplomatic means. Friendship with Persia was its keynote. Despite temporary setbacks over the question of Kandahar, the oft-proclaimed desire of recovering the Mughal homelands was really used as a diplomatic ploy, for it was never. These military and diplomatic means adopted by the Mughals were remarkably successful in giving India security from foreign invasions for a longer time. Secondly, the Mughal invasions insisted on relations of equality with leading Asian nations of the time, both with the Safavids, who claimed a special position by virtue of their relationship with the Prophet, and with the Ottoman sultans, who had assumed the title of Padshah-e-Islam and claimed to be the successors of the Caliph of Baghdad. So they were literally competing, the people who claim to be of the lineage of Prophet, the Safavids or the Persians, and the Ottoman sultans who assumed the title of Padshah-e-Islam and were said to be the successors of the Caliph of Baghdad. Thirdly, the Mughal used their foreign policy to promote India's commercial interest. Kabul and Kandahar were the two gateways of India's trade with Central Asia. The economic importance of this trade for the Mughal Empire has yet to be fully assessed. Growth of administration, Mansabdari system, and the Mughal army. The administrative machinery and revenue system developed by Akbar were maintained under Jahangir and Shah Jahan with minor modifications. Important changes were, however, effected in the functioning of the Mansabdari system. The Masala system, as it developed under the Mughals, was a distinctive and unique system which did not have any exact parallel outside India. The origins of the Masala system can perhaps be traced back to Genghis Khan, who organized his army on a decimal basis, the lowest unit of command being 10 and the highest 10,000 Toman, whose commander was called Khan. The Mongol system influenced to some extent the military system of the Delhi Sultanate, for we hear of commanders of 100 and 1,000 Sadis and Hazras, but we do not quite know the system which was prevalent under Babur and Humayun. There is a good deal of controversy as to when the Mansabdari system was started. From the available evidence, it seems to have been initiated by Akbar in the 19th year of his reign, 1577, at the same time that he reformed the revenue system and introduced what are called Zat and Sawar. Although many historians are of the opinion that the Sawar rank was introduced later by Akbar, recent studies show that both ranks were introduced at the same time. The Zat rank signified the personal status of an individual in the imperial hierarchy and also fixed his salary. Zat actually corresponded to the status of an individual in that particular hierarchy. There were 66 grades of mansabs from 10 to 10,000, but ranks above 5,000 were reserved for princes. Persons holding ranks below 500 zat were called mansabdars. Those from 500 and below 2500 amirs, and those holding ranks of 2500 and above were called Amir-e-Umda or Amir-e-Azam. However, the word Mansabdar is sometimes used for all the three categories. Apart from status, this classification had a significance. An Amir or an Amir-e-Umda could have another Amir or Mansabdar serve under him, but not so a Mansabdar. Thus, a person with a rank of 5,000 could have under him a Mansabdar up to a rank of 500 Zat, and one with a rank of 4,000 could have a Mansabdar up to a rank of 400 Zat, and so on. The categories were not rigid. Persons were generally appointed at a low Mansab and gradually promoted depending upon their merits and the favor of the emperor. A person could also be demoted as a mark of punishment. Thus, there was only one service including both army men and civilians. People enter service at the lowest rung of the ladder and could hope to rise to the position of an Amir or even Amir-e-Umda. To that extent, careers were thrown open to talent. In addition to meeting his personal expenses, the Mansabdar had to maintain out of his salary a stipulated quota of horses, elephants, beasts of burden. Thus, a Mansabdar holding a Zat rank of 5,000 had to maintain 340 horses, 100 elephants, 400 camels, 100 mules, and 160 carts. That's a lot. Later, these were maintained centrally, but the Mansabdar had to pay for them out of his salary. The horses were classified into six categories and the elephants into five according to quality, the number and quality of horses and elephants being carefully prescribed. This was so because horses and elephants of high breed were greatly prized and were considered indispensable for an efficient military machine. Cavalry and elephants, in fact, formed the main basis of the army in those days. Though the artillery was rapidly becoming more important, the transport corps was vital for making the army more mobile. For meeting these expenses, Mughal Mansabdars were paid handsomely. A Mansabdar with a rank of 5,000 could get a salary of rupees 30,000 per month, a Mansabdar of 3,000 rupees 17,000, and of 1,000 rupees 8,200 per month. Even a humble Sadi holding a rank of 100 could get rupees 7,000 per year, roughly. Even then, the Mughal Mansabdars formed the highest paid service in the world. The Sawar rank indicated the number of cavalrymen a Mansabdar was expected to maintain for the service of the state. For the maintenance of this contingent, the Mansabdar was paid at average rate of rupees 240 per annum per Sawar to begin with. Later, in the time of Jagir, it was reduced to rupees 200 per annum. Individual Sawars were paid according to their nationality. A Mughal got more than an Indian Muslim. Mughal got more than an Indian Muslim or a Rajput, and the quality of their mount. The Mansabdar was allowed to retain 5% of the total salary bill of the Sawars in order to meet various contingent expenses. In addition, he got an increase of 2 rupees in his Zat salary for every Sawar he maintained. This was to compensate him for his efforts and the large responsibility it implied. Two features of the Sawar system may be noted. For every contingent of 10 men, the Mansabdar was supposed to maintain 22 or 20 horses. Since the cavalry was the main arm, replacement of horses during a march or during battle was considered vital, so much so that a sawar with one horse only was considered nim sawar, that is half of a sawar, or one who had one leg on the ground. Secondly, the Mughals favored mixed contingents with men drawn in fixed proportions from Irani and Turani Mughals, Indians, Afghans, and Rajputs. This was to break the spirit of tribal or ethnic exclusiveness. However, in special circumstances, a Mughal or a Rajput Mansabdar was allowed to have a contingent drawn exclusively from Mughal or Rajputs. Towards the end of Akbar's reign, the highest rank a noble could attain was raised from 5,000 to 7,000, and two premier nobles of the empire, Mirza Aziz Koka and Raja Man Singh, were honored with the rank of 7,000 each. This limit was maintained till the end of Aurangzeb's reign. A number of other modifications were, however, carried out during the period. There was a tendency to reduce such salaries. The average salary paid to a Sawar was reduced by Jahangir, as we have noted above. Jahangir also introduced a system whereby selected nobles would be allowed to maintain a larger quota of troopers without raising their Zat rank. This was the Do Asfa, See Asfa system, literally trooper with two or three horses, which implied that a Mansabdar holding this rank had to maintain and was paid for double the quota of troopers indicated by his Sawar rank. Thus, a Mansabdar holding a Zat rank of 3,000 and 3,000 Sawars, do Asfa, Sit Asfa, would be required to maintain 6,000 troopers. Normally, no Mansabdar was given a Sawar rank which was higher than his Zat rank. A further modification which comes to our notice during Shah Jahan's reign was aimed at drastically reducing the number of sawars a noble was required to maintain. Thus, a noble was expected to maintain a quota of only one third of his sawar rank, and in some circumstances, one fourth or even one fifth. The noble of Jahangir's reign, who had the rank of 3,000 zat, 3,000 sawar, would maintain not more than 1,000 troopers, but this would be doubled. That is, he would maintain 2,000 troopers of his rank if his rank was 3,000 Sawar, do Ashpa Si Ashpa. These quantifiable Sawar Zat ranks are tough to remember, I guess, but it would be helpful for it will be helpful if we would analyze the type of questions from the previous years and analyze the patterns. And according to that, I don't think so many questions were asked from the quantifiable Sawars or Zats as to how many sawars would be required to maintain a particular zat or a rank. So, nevertheless, let's continue the reading of a chapter. Although the salaries of the mansabdars were stated in rupees, they were generally not paid in cash, but by assigning them a jagir. The working of the Jagirdar system under Akbar has already been discussed. Mansabdars preferred a Jagir because cash payments were likely to be delayed and sometimes entailed a lot of harassment. Also, control over land was a mark of social prestige. By devising a careful scale of gradation and laying down meticulous rules of business, the Mughals bureaucratized the nobility, but they could not take away their feudal attachment to land. This, as we shall see, was one of the dilemmas facing the Mughal nobility. For purposes of assigning Jagirs, the revenue department had to maintain a register indicating the assessed income chama of various areas. The account, however, was not indicated in rupees but in dams, which was calculated at the rate of 40 dams to a rupee. This document was called the Jamadami or assessed income based on dams. As the number of Mansabdars kept growing, even the above modifications were not found adequate. Drastic cuts in salaries all round would have created disaffection among the nobles, which the rulers could ill afford. Hence, the quota of troopers and horses a noble had to maintain out of his Sawar rank was further reduced by a new scaling device. The salaries of the Mansabdars were put on a month scale, 10 months, 8 months, 6 months, or even less than that, and their obligations for the maintenance of a quota of Sawars were brought down accordingly. Thus, a Mansabdar who had a rank of 3,000 Zat, 3,000 Sawar, and maintained 1,000 Sawars under the rule of one third mentioned above would normally have to maintain 2,200 horses under the rule introduced by Akbar, but if he was put on a 10-month scale, he would maintain only 1,800 horses, if for 6 months only 1,100. It was rare for anyone to get allowances for less than 5 months or for more than 10 months. The month scale had little to do with a decline in the income of the Jagir. During Shah Jahan's reign, the Jamadami, that is the value of the Jagir, increased, but the increase kept pace broadly with the price rise during the period. Also, the month scale was applied not only to Jagirs but also to those who were paid in cash. It may be noted that most of the Marathas who were inducted into the Mughal service were assigned mansabs on a 5 monthly basis or even less. They were not considered at par with the others uh, in the the Mansabdari system, I guess. In this way, while they were given a higher rank in the hierarchy, the actual number of horses and the effective savars was much less than and indicated by their rank. The availability of remounts was, as we have seen, vital for an efficient cavalry force. A drastic reduction of remounts during Shah Jahan's reign thus must have adversely affected the efficiency of the Mughal cavalry as a whole. The Masada system of the Mughals was a complex system. Its efficient functioning depended upon a number of factors, including the proper functioning of Dag, branding system, and of the Jagirdari system. If the Dag system worked badly, the state would be cheated. If the Jamadami system was inflated, or if the Jagirdar was not able to get the salary due to him, he would be disaffected or he would not maintain his due contingent. On balance, the Masada system would work properly under Shah Jahan on account of his meticulous attention to administration and men, including the appointment of highly competent persons as viziers. Give attention to the choice of right person for service, strict discipline, and a definite system of promotion and rewards made the Mughal nobility a loyal and, on the whole, a highly dependable body which was able to discharge the due duties of administration and to defend and expand the empire. The Mughal army. The cavalry, as we have noted, was the principal arm of the Mughal army, and the Mansabdars provided the overwhelming proportion of it. In addition to the Mansabdars, the Mughal emperors used to entertain individual troopers called Ahadis. The Ahadis have been called gentlemen troopers and received much higher salaries than other troopers. They were a highly trusted corps being recruited directly by the emperor and had their own master. An Ahadi mustered up to 5 horses, though sometimes two of them shared a horse. The duties of Ahadis were of miscellaneous character. Most clerks in the imperial office, the painters of the court, the foremen in the royal karkhanas belonged to this corps. Many were appointed as adjutants and carriers of imperial orders. In Shah Jahan's reign, they numbered 7,000 and were often sent into the fighting line. They were well distributed over the different parts of the army. Many of them worked as skilled musketeers, barakandas, and bowmen tirandaz. In addition to the Ahadis, the emperors maintained a corps of royal bodyguards and armed palace guards. Bodyguards were Valashuhis and armed palace guards. They were cavalrymen but served on foot in the citadel and the palace. The footmen, Piyadagan, formed a numerous but miscellaneous body. Many of them consisted of matchlock bearers, banduch, and received salaries ranging between 3 and 7 rupees a month. This was the infantry proper, but the foot soldiers also included porters, servants, news runners, swordsmen, wrestlers, and slaves. Slaves, though not as numerous as during the Sultanate period, were clothed and fed by the emperor or by a prince. Sometimes a slave could become a gentleman trooper, but generally foot soldiers had a low status. The Mughal emperors had a large stable of war elephants and also a well organized park of artillery. The artillery consisted of two sections: heavy guns, which were used for defending or assaulting forts. These were often clumsy and difficult to move. The second was the light artillery, which was highly mobile and moved with the emperor whenever he wanted. The Mughals were solicitous of improving the artillery, and at first many Ottoman and Portuguese were employed in the department. By the time of Aurangzeb, Mughal artillery had improved considerably, and foreigners found employment in the artillery department with difficulty. The big guns were sometimes extravagantly large in size, but as a modern writer says, these huge guns made more noise than they did harm. They could not be fired many times in a day and were very liable to burst and destroy the men in charge. However, the Frenchman Bernier, who accompanied Shah Jahan to Lahore and Kashmir, found the light artillery called artillery of the stirrup to be extremely well appointed. He says it consisted of 50 small field pieces, all of brass, each piece mounted on a well-made and handsomely painted carriage containing two ammunition boxes and drawn by two fine horses with a third horse in reserve. Artillery or swivel guns were also mounted on elephants and camels. It is difficult to estimate the strength of the Mughal army. It consisted under Shah Jahan of about 200,000 cavalry, including the men working in the districts and with Faujdars. It rose to 240,000 under Aurangzeb. The infantry under Shah Jahan, excluding the non-fighting people, are placed at 40,000 and may have been maintained at a similar figure under Aurangzeb. How efficient was the Mughal army as compared to the neighboring West and Central Asian states and the European states of the time? It is difficult to answer this question. Though a number of European travelers such as Bernier have made adverse remarks about the efficiency of the Mughal army. A careful analysis shows that his remarks were rarely directed towards the Mughal infantry, which had no drill or discipline, was ill organized and ill led, and resembled a rabble. The development of the infantry had taken a difficult road in Europe. With the development of the flint gun, the infantry became a formidable fighting force during the 17th century and could even outclass the cavalry, as the Indian powers were to realize to their cost during the 18th century. The success of the Mughals against the Uzbeks, who could match themselves with the Persians at the time of the Balkh campaigns, suggests that the Mughal army was not far inferior to the Central Asian and Persian armies in an open contest. Its major weakness was in the naval sphere, particularly in the field of warfare. Though somewhat deficient in the field of artillery, it had apparently caught up with the Asian powers, though not with the European sea-going powers by the time of Aurangzeb. But the army as a whole, particularly the cavalry, was closely linked with the Jagirdari system, which in turn was based on the feudal system of land relations prevalent in the country. In the ultimate result, the strength and efficiency of one dependent on the other. With this, we've come to an end of this massive chapter on the 17th century of India. I hope you may have maintained your pace with me and we are done with this chapter. So, see you guys in another video. Bye.